Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kara, and I'm with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today's webinar focus is on the Project Bill of Materials, aka PBoM, and we are excited to have Stacey Nuveman as our presenter. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items to ensure a smooth webinar experience for everyone. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the questions panel on your screen. You can type the questions there and we'll address them during the question and answer session at the end or close to the end. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have any other issues, feel free to use the chat panel to communicate with our team and we'll do our best to assist you. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all registered attendees after the session. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. It's my pleasure to hand it over to Stacey. Stacey, the virtual floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Kara. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Welcome everybody. This is the Project Bill of Materials, or PBoM webinar for local LET projects, and I will go ahead and get started. So like I said, my name is Stacey Nuveman. This is my contact information, and I work in the Division of Construction Management in the Office of Alternative Project Delivery for ODOT Central Office. My job duties include coordinating value engineering change proposals that are greater than $100,000 statewide, and also acting as the construction liaison for the Office of Local Programs. Today we are going to discuss general material management along with the purpose and overview of the Project Bill of Materials, which will include a mock run-through. The goal of this presentation is to provide you with guidance and a level of expectation when it comes to tracking materials on federally aided construction projects. To go through the agenda, we will be talking today about regulations and FHWA stewardship, some material acceptance methods, job mix formulas or JMFs, the ODOT LET PBoM versus the local LET PBoM, BABA in the PBoM, followed by demonstration and ending with questions. So we'll start by talking about some regulations and FHWA stewardship. As an LPA, you are recipients of federal funds. What you may or may not know are the agreements and obligations that take place beforehand between FHWA and ODOT that allows you to be recipients. Section 106 of Title 23, United States Code, requires that the Federal Highway Administration and the state enter into an agreement documenting the extent to which the state assumes the responsibilities of FHWA under Title 23. The Stewardship and Oversight Agreement formalizes these delegated responsibilities and agreements to address how the Federal Aid Highway Program will be administered in the state. As I'm sure you can guess, materials management oversight and compliance is delegated to ODOT. What this slide is depicting is the relationship state DOTs have with their respective FHWA divisions. And because of this relationship, the LPA program exists. Because of the Stewardship and Oversight Agreement, the state DOT may permit local public agencies, or LPAs, to carry out the state DOT's assumed responsibilities, but the state DOT is always responsible and accountable for LPA compliance with all applicable federal laws and requirements. This is truly a daunting task. This fiscal year alone is expected to top $500 million in LPA projects. At any one time, ODOT has approximately 200 active local projects, and that means there's 200 different ways of managing a construction project. This is a situation and relationship where if the LPA fails, ODOT fails, especially in the eyes of FHWA. Therefore, it is beneficial if ODOT can provide tools to help the LPA succeed. And there we have the Project Bill of Materials. So in order to receive federal funds on ODOT LEP projects, One thing ODOT must provide to FHWA is that we have sufficient mechanisms in place to test, sample, track, and certify material. This is governed by CFR 637, a specification that does not define the process, but rather the end goal. It is up to the state DOTs to determine their own materials management process and then receive approval from FHWA. ODOT's Office of Materials Management goes through an accreditation process every 2 years with both ASH
Stacey, you broke up. We lost you.
and it's the department's responsibility to meet those expectations. Sarah, can you still hear me?
I can hear you now. We did lose you towards the end of your last slide and at the beginning of this slide.
Okay, let me just restart from the beginning of this slide's material then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So to keep it simple, FHWA wants to ensure quality products are used in every facet of our construction project, and it's the department's responsibility to meet those expectations. Thus, ODOT needs to ensure quality products are used on local LEP projects and tracked accordingly, knowing full well there is a premium for said materials. This is the standard and expectation when accepting federal funds. Now we are going to move on to material acceptance methods. As stated in the LPA Construction Manual of Procedures, before payment is made to the contractor, sufficient measurements, calculations, material certs, etc. must be made to ensure close conformity to plans and specifications. This means that materials accepted must be greater than the materials required. So how do you go about accepting materials? There are numerous methods required to accept materials, and they are defined by the following: the qualified products list, the approved lists, daily source report, quality control, quality assurance, certified test data, small quantity, and a few others that we will go over. We'll get into the definitions of each of these here shortly. For example, there are primary and component materials like conduits, where the primary material might be reinforced concrete, aluminum, polyethylene corrugated, etc. And the component materials might be things such as joint filler or sand. And we will use conversion factors to convert those material units to work units. For example, cross sections of curb might vary for type 2 curb, type 2A, type 3, and all of those different types require different amounts of concrete. So we have to ensure that the material accepted is greater than the materials required when paying for that item. So starting with the qualified products list, this list identifies materials and manufacturers whose materials are approved for use on ODOT projects without any further documentation or testing. These are materials that historically have had an acceptable performance history. The producing industry has also had a history of furnishing these quality materials. These are relatively small dollars in the department's overall material purchases, and the Office of Materials Management Laboratory does not possess the equipment or capabilities to routinely test all of these materials for acceptance. So where can you find the materials on ODOT's QPL list? The QPL is located on the ODOT Materials Management website. You can either search this by going to transportation.ohio.gov, doing business, construction, and then materials management, or you can Google ODOT materials management. And just as a note, you can also see the approved list, certified producers and suppliers, and the CMRS. Once you click on the QPL tile, this will take you to the QPL webpage. And there you will be able to look up materials and open new tabs to see those reports. So what's important to look for on this sheet is the material name, brand name, and source. So ensure that the material brought to the project site from the contractor falls under one of these brand names. And I advise that when you are looking up an item in the QPL, to save that QPL in your project folder so that you have record of it. Moving on to the approved list. This list is an internet-based list created to provide ODOT contractors and field personnel easy access to information needed to construct or manage a project. So some of the proof that you will need for your files include the manufacturer stamps or imprint on the item, the label information, a letter of conformance showing the manufacturer, some other form of documentation showing the manufacturer grade and or brand sufficient for positive identification of the material for determining approved list status. So you can find the approved list on ODOT's website under Materials Management and Approved Products and Materials. Moving on to Daily Source Reports, or DSRs. The best way to describe a DSR is that ODOT certifies a producer supplier and their bulk inventory. Each time that producer supplier shifts their inventory or material to a project site, ODOT's DSR tracks and deducts that quantity from their approved inventory. Once a producer supplier's inventory is depleted, they must get recertified by the state. This is why it's important to collect DSRs on LPA projects, because the same material standards apply on ODOT LEP projects as they do on LPA local LEP projects. DSRs are used by external producer suppliers to ship materials. These come directly to the job site from the producer supplier. This has replaced TE24s and the virtual warehouse. So rather than a report by project, it is a report of all the material that has left the supplier that day. So multiple projects might be on the report. You will receive the full report and need to look for your specific project and confirm materials. Local LEP projects are getting added to AWP for DSR use. So if your project identification number is not added into AWP yet, the producer supplier will select LPA, then add the PID and associated line items in the comments section. Moving on to another one of our newer items is the MSV, or material source vendor. So this will show up on the list when we have materials where the original source of the material has actually sold that to a different source. For example, if Sherwin-Williams sells paint products to A&A Safety, the material showing up in the system from Sherwin-Williams will display as MSV. Another material acceptance method is certified test data. This includes H-piles, cast point piles, shear studs, cast in place reinforced concrete piles, slope erosion protection, many other items. This is not a certificate of compliance, and test data still needs to be verified to make sure that it meets specifications. Another way that we check materials is through small quantity. So before saying that a material is a small quantity and accepting that material, the project engineer will need to evaluate whether that item meets the requirements of CMS 106.03, whether it does not exceed 10% of the total quantity required for that specific construction item, and if it is not a critical structure or highway safety item, then the engineer may accept the small quantity of an item. Moving on to job control. This is where you will take a sample from that item to pay for work, and that sample test will determine whether the quality of materials incorporated into the work conforms to the quality requirements of that item. For an example, concrete tests. We test all of our concrete before incorporation into the work to make sure that it meets our specifications for air, slump, and yield. A nice thing about the LPA PBoM is that it lists the material acceptance methods, so you do not have to spend time figuring out which material acceptance method you need to use or need to remember all of these different types of material acceptance methods. Now to jump into some asphalt and concrete JMFs. A JMF is basically a way to ensure the asphalt or concrete mix is approved and from a certified producer and supplier. So you should be using the JMF that comes to the site on the concrete ticket, and it's shown here in a red box. So that's an easy way to find where the JMF is on a concrete ticket. And I will quickly go through how to navigate the system to check if a JMF that has come to the site is approved. So you will go to the CMRS portal and click on Contractor Reports. This should be available to all internal and external ODOT users. You'll then click on Active PCC or Portland Cement Concrete JMFs, and then click on AWP next to it. That will take you to a page that will ask you to enter the ID of the JMF. After you've entered that ID, you can click to generate a report, and you will be able to verify the approval of that job mix. So you can see here that the JMF that was entered is approved and on what day that was effective. Now to talk a little bit about asphalt job mix formulas. A note here is that tons divided by cubic yards does not always equal 2. So in the project bill of materials, it might have a conversion factor listed as 2, but you will still want to check the specific JMF for that job mix to make sure that you have the correct conversion factor when paying for the item. So in this case, we've entered the JMF ID into the CMRS portal, and it has populated a report for us, and we can see that the conversion factor is 2.043. So if you're seeing a shortage on the spreadsheet, double check those conversion factors to make sure that they are accurate. All right, now we will move to the ODOT LET, first local LET, project bill of materials. So first I will start by going through some ways that ODOT project engineers use to check their materials accepted meets the materials required for their project. So this is one of the ways that they check. They use this DSR quantities report that can be found in the CMRS portal. And you can see that this is just a check to see if the shipped materials match the actual placed materials that have been paid for in the daily work report. Another way for ODOT project engineers to verify their materials is in AWP, and this is a screenshot of one of those sections. This is showing information for a specific material that has already been paid, and you can just verify that the JMF is correct and the representative quantity is correct and the conversion factor is correct. So I'm just showing these examples to let you know that we're not asking the locals to do anything really additional than what our ODOT project engineers are also doing. So we will all arrive at the same conclusion with the same information. There are just a few different ways to get there. So all of that to say that we don't require the LPAs to use AWP. So I can't say that you can do your materials in the exact same way that an ODOT-let project engineer is able to do them. What I can offer, though, is the help of a very useful spreadsheet that has been developed by the Office of Construction Administration. So the ODOT project, or the ODOT provided project bill of materials, is a project tool. It's not mandated. You don't actually have to use it, but there does need to be some way, some system that you use to track and certify the materials that are coming to your project. Just collecting tickets does not meet our standards and expectations. And you still, whatever system you use still needs to adhere to the CFR 637. So many consultants, but not all of them, are using Infotech's Appia. We have worked with Appia to integrate this PBoM spreadsheet into their system. So if you are using Appia, then you should have a built-in PBoM. But if you'd still like to use the spreadsheet version of the PBoM, you are more than welcome to. It is available for everybody. So even with this update that we've done to the project bill of materials, the sheet still isn't perfect. There are some imperfections in the sheet that I want to make you aware of. The sheet does have a tendency to convert item codes to scientific notation. This should hopefully not be much of an issue to you with this update, as the sheet has been formatted to prevent this. However, it still might be worthwhile to check the sheet to make sure that this automatic conversion is not happening. Another flaw of the sheet is that it doesn't include local data. So if there are special item codes that you are using as an LPA that is not included in ODOT's standard bill of materials, you will need to enter that item's information into the sheet manually. An additional flaw regarding the standard bill of materials is that the item master is static. That means it will automatically change when central office changes the item codes. Finally, there are some missing or incorrect conversion factors listed for materials in the SBOM. I mentioned earlier the oversight needed when it comes to conversion factors for asphalt, but you should also keep an eye out for items where the conversion factors just may not look right. This is something that affects the ODOT side and the local side, and it is something that's being worked on in our office. Moving on to a little bit of Build America, Buy America in the project bill of materials. A little bit of background on BABA. For ODOT, it is listed as Proposal Note 133, and what it says is that all products used on construction products must be made in the US. This specifically includes iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials. In order to comply with this federal regulation, contractors must submit documentation that confirms that the material that was used is in compliance with PBoM. Just so you all know, there was a webinar a few months ago given by our office about the Build America, Buy America requirement, and that information is available on LTAP's website. And if you would like any more information on that, you can reach out to me and I can send you in the right direction, or you can do a search on LTAP's website. So in order to help figure out what materials you need a specific certification for, we have included a new column in this spreadsheet to identify those materials. You can also cross-check an item's status with the PBoM materials spreadsheet listed on the Buy America Information and Exceptions page on ODOT's website. So now we are going to move into the demonstration, and if there are any questions so far, Kara, you can let me know and I can try.
Wonderful, Stacey. Okay, as of right now, we just have 2 questions. This first one is a little long, so please bear with me. So their question is, during a 2-phase construction project, phase 1, asphalt material over a certain area is less than the planned quantity, but phase 2, asphalt material over a certain area planned quantity. In general, over the entire project, they have excess asphalt tickets, but a known shortage on phase 1 and known overrun on phase 2. So the person is asking, how do we address the contractor payment and material documentation in that type of a situation?
In that situation, I would maybe recommend that when it comes to the spreadsheet, when it comes to the material documentation, to maybe create a different version, maybe a phase 1 version of the spreadsheet and a phase 2 version of the spreadsheet, or even just maybe doing something as simple as copying a row of the spreadsheet and pasting it and using one row for phase 1 and one row for phase 2, so that you still get that documentation that you were under in phase 1 and over in phase 2.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacey. And one other question. This person is asking, is there a place to go check conversation factors such as curb types?
I don't believe we have a specific list for conversion factors. When it comes to those specific items like the curb types, sometimes they are being calculated in the field or from a cross section of the curb. So you would have to double check that standard drawing and see really how the dimensions of that curb are, and use that to calculate your conversion factor.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, and they say that makes sense and said they appreciate it. All right, that was the end of our questions for right now.
Okay, so I will go ahead and close this out, and open up the spreadsheet. So this is the project bill of materials spreadsheet. This is just a blank version that I've saved to my desktop. And I'm also going to pull up information that I've already sourced from the CMRS portal on an ODOT project in order to show you how to utilize this spreadsheet. So the most important items that you'll need to effectively use this spreadsheet are the project bid item codes, the contract line number, and the bid quantity. So those are the three things that we're looking for from an LPA project. So I will go ahead and start copying and pasting some of this information from this spreadsheet to the other spreadsheet so that we can run the report. So let me start with item codes. And I'm just copying and pasting here. All right. Now that all of those have been copied, it's time to actually run the spreadsheet. So once you have all that information in this box, you can go to the Project Bill of Materials tab, and then you will see that right now this is blank. All you need to do is press this click to run button, and it will run the Project Bill of Materials. One note about this spreadsheet is that you want to make sure that you have enabled your macros, because this is using a macro to pull all of this information together. Another note about this sheet is that it will only return a row or rows for the specific item codes that are listed in the standard bill of materials tab. And it has finished. When it has finished, you will get this pop-up message that says done. All matching items copied with correct reference numbers and bid quantities. So we'll click OK. And then we will be able to see our project bill of materials spreadsheet. So the codes that are listed in the standard bill of materials tab, which in this spreadsheet is listed as the 2025 PBoM. These are the codes that the sheet is pulling from to provide you with the information that you are looking for. So you can see that in here we have a Build America, Buy America column. That's basically just denoting whether this material is subject to BABA compliance. And another note is that if you do have any items with no materials, or that maybe just their item code doesn't exist in this sheet, a value won't be returned in the actual project bill of materials. So if there is something that you're looking for in this sheet, they should be automatically sorted by the reference numbers, but it won't return rows for items like clearing and grubbing and other items that include removals that have no materials associated with them. So it will skip over those and recognize the ones that just exist in the standard bill of materials, and then we'll use those to populate the project bill of materials. So you might need to do some work at the start of your project when you make this sheet to ensure that the item codes provided by the LPA match the ODOT item codes. So not always do the item codes match up between what the LPA has and what ODOT has. So that's just a quick check to run before you populate this, that your item codes do match the ODOT item codes. And now that the sheet is populated, you can manipulate it a little bit. So one of the things that is recommended to do once you've got the sheet filled out is to look at each item and make sure that you're really only keeping the rows that you need. You could keep those rows if you would like to, but I find that it's much easier and a little bit cleaner to go through the items, especially those that have quite a few component items where you know you might not be needing all of those components. So you can filter each column. Each column has one of these little filter buttons on it. And I find one of the easiest ways to filter is just by reference number. So we will turn off all of these and just filter by reference number 20. And it will just return to us rows that have that reference number. So now you've got a good snapshot of this specific item. You can see that it's guardrail type, MGS. And it's got one primary material and 3 component materials. And say you know you're going to use wood posts, but there's a chance that you're not going to be using the steel posts. So you could go in and just delete this row. And then you've narrowed down your spreadsheet just a little bit so that you're only looking at the materials that are really applicable to your project. So once you go through that for each reference number, then you can start to really use the sheet for material quantity checks for how much has been placed and or used. So we're going to scroll over to some of these further to the right columns and take a look at these gray boxes. So if we, for example, start with this reference number 11, we can enter manually the amount of quantity that has been placed or paid to date. So for example, let's say that we've placed 2,000. Now, the sheet automatically takes the number that you've input, multiplies that by the conversion factor that's listed in column K, and then gives you how much material should be required for how much of that item that you have paid for. So it tells you in column P how much that quantity is, and then by inputting how much material you have actually accepted to date, you can check in column Q whether or not you have an overage or a shortage of that material. So say we only had 3,500 of this material that was accepted to date, it would still show us a negative 100 in column Q. That means we need 100 more of that material before we are in compliance. Now, one of the things we have fixed with this sheet are that in the past, some of the item codes that may have repeated did not populate twice. So when the macro would go to the item code in the project reference item list, it would only really give you a return the first time that it saw that item code. Something we have fixed with this sheet is that even if there are multiple of one specific item code, it will still return those reference numbers related to that item code. So for example, if you had 2 different structures on a project with 2 different line items and they both had the same material item code for each of those structures, this sheet now returns a row for that item in structure 1, and then we'll also recognize that it's a separate item for the second structure, and we'll return information for that row as well. So if you are having you are going through the sheet and using it and finding that things aren't quite populating correctly, please do reach out to me. I have my contact information listed, and I will definitely work on some troubleshooting either with you or with the sheet, so that everybody has a little bit less of a headache when actually trying to use this sheet. So that's a quick overview. And I did want to mention that if kind of going back to these accepted material quantities and placed paid item quantities, that if you do adjust these throughout the project and you pay more material, which is how things usually happen, you can just quickly adjust this placed paid item quantity, maybe to 2,500, and the adjustment will follow in the appropriate columns, and then you can go back to the accepted material quantity and adjust that as well. So say we have 4,600 units of that material. We now have an overage, and it shows us green and what our overage is. So my advice is to really populate this at the beginning of your project so that you can have it to use throughout the life of your project. And try to narrow down those materials to really what you think you're going to need so that you don't have to go through every single row each time you're going through this. I did want to note that this spreadsheet has been published already. It is out on the website and should be available to you at this point. So if you do have any questions or concerns about the new sheet, please feel free to reach out to me. And I think that is about it. So I went through the demonstration, and now if there are any questions, hopefully Kara will let me know.
Thank you, Stacey. We do have a couple of questions that came in while you were in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
So the first question is, someone was wanting to know how you enable the macro on Excel.
Oh, that's a great question. Let me just go back to the spreadsheet real quick. So in this spreadsheet, actually, let me open a blank spreadsheet and I will show you how it usually pops up. So if you were to open a spreadsheet from the internet, from a download, it will usually pop up, and maybe it won't this time, but usually right here in this kind of first column of the spreadsheet, it will have a little yellow box and it will say enable macros. All you really have to do is just click that box and say, yes, I want to enable macros. This is the only macro that is in the sheet, and once you have run the sheet, the macro will not run again. You can click the button and it will certainly try to run again if you have corrected maybe something in your project reference item list, but it will not really populate anything additional in this spreadsheet after you've initially run the macro.
Wonderful, thank you. that same person asked, where is the link to that spreadsheet?
That is a good question. So I will show you. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my recommendation is to just, this is the way that I usually find things the easiest and the quickest, is to just search ODOT PBoM, and the page that pops up, Project Bill of Materials. And this is right here is where you can download the Project Bill of Materials. So if you click on this, it will pop up here and as a download. So click on that, and this is where I was saying that the sheet will say macros have been disabled. So you just have to click this enable content button and the macro should run fine.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have some more questions about some of the information in the spreadsheets.
Okay.
Next question is, where does the material code come from?
The material code, like this ODOT item code, is that?
I am
think
guessing that is yes. Ken, if you want to elaborate on that, please feel free. But it was about that time. I think I'm going to say yes. That's what they meant.
Okay. All right. So yes, the ODOT item codes are populated by our Office of Estimating, and
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, Stacey. As I'm looking at it, there is a material code column.
there is, and I will say I do not know how those are populated.
Okay.
So those are usually associated with a specific material. And I might have to get back to you on that one because those, as far as I understand, are associated with a specific item code or a specific material item. So if you look at this like 40705, that will always, in my knowledge, associate with glass beads type A, moisture, and adhesion.
Okay. All right. Ken, please let us know if you need more clarification.
Yes.
Next question, how do you know which items have not been included?
I think the easiest way to check that would be to go to your spreadsheet and just look at the reference numbers. I think that's the easiest way to really look and see what items haven't been included. So if you're looking at my screen now, you can see that the reference number the sheet starts with is number 11. And in our project reference item list, we do have bid item codes, contract line numbers, and bid quantities for items 1 through 10. And you can see in the project bill of materials that it does go from row number 5 to row number 6. That's another good way to check to make sure there are no like hidden rows or anything in the spreadsheet. But that's a good way to see which item codes have been skipped. Now, if you believe that one has been skipped on accident, first, please contact me, and I would love to help you fix that. And second, you can always add in a row. You can right click on the row, and I believe you can insert a new row in this form, and then you can add in all the information that you need for that row.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we had someone, an attendee, who shared that the ODOT test lab assigns material codes to all the items in the standard item master. Just an FYI there.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Let's see here. Oh, so we have a question asking, are we only monitoring the primary components?
We are not, I believe. I believe we are also monitoring component materials as well. So we do still need to monitor, like if you look at guardrail specifically, that we care about the primary component maybe of the guardrail end section, but we do also care about the wood posts and how we receive those, and making sure that we receive the appropriate amount of those to satisfy our how much we've paid for it.
Wonderful. Okay. And the next question, actually the next two questions, you may have already answered those, and I might just not be familiar with the terms that they're using. We had one person asked, where do we find information on MSV acceptance?
Oh, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I cannot provide a lot of information on MSV, and I had to really do some digging to even find out what MSV was and the impact it might have on us. So I don't really have a good contact to give you to look up more information on that. Really, the most I can tell you about the MSV is that it really shouldn't impact how you receive a material. So if you're worried about MSV, I have been told by others in materials positions that they were informed that MSV materials are not the materials. I apologize.
Okay.
That the impact of MSV shouldn't really be on us.
Okay, thank you. And as of right now, this is our last question. Someone was asking if you could please provide a link to access JMF.
Okay, so I think they're asking for a link to the CMRS portal. And that is where we can search through to find whether a JMF is acceptable, or I apologize, is approved or not. But we can definitely send out a link to that, and maybe some direct links to the asphalt and concrete JMF reports.
Wonderful. Okay. And we have someone that asked if Mike Murphy, I will go ahead and send you a link to the BABA webinar via email. So I will take care of that question/request. Other than that, I do believe that we have reached our time. Let's see here. So Stacey, thank you so much for your insightful presentation. I truly appreciate the time that you've spent with us today, and really appreciate your knowledge and expertise. As I mentioned earlier, The recording of this webinar will be shared with all registered attendees. Before you leave, I would just like to say that LTAP would appreciate your feedback. So a very short 4-question survey will automatically launch in your browser once this webinar ends. It only takes a minute, and your input helps us improve future sessions. Other than that, thank you all so much for attending. We hope you found this webinar informative and engaging, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you, everybody, for attending.